Hold up. When was it okay for white people to define what and who is racist? Sabby Sabs is far from prejudice in any way. You motherfuckers need to watch yourself. Nothing she said in the video was racist at all. You just don't like us calling white BS out. Or I guess white's BS out? Anyway. When was it okay for white people to define what and who is racist? So this, in of itself, right out of the gate, is racist. White people cannot define who and what is racist? This is something that only black people can do? Well, there's a definition for racism, and it doesn't include this. And I'll include the video where I define racism at the end. But regardless, is far from prejudiced in any way? You just engage in a conversation with other people of color saying, this is basically talking about how all white girls treat you a certain way. That's prejudice. You're engaging in prejudice, period. And then it's, you motherfuckers need to watch yourself. Okay, what does that mean? Watch myself or what? You're going to beat me up? That's going to go really far in convincing anybody, I'm sure. Anyway, nothing she said in the video is racist at all. You just don't like us calling out white BS or white BS out. So what's white BS? There's a BS specifically to white people? Guess what? That's racism. You just said that all white people have a certain bullshit. That's racism. Now I have a separate video segment specifically devoted to Ernie, but let me go into this one. JFC, why peepo, which is a new racial slur against white people, I might add, need to take a hiatus and just shut down white media and quietly listen to everyone else for, I don't know, a month or two at least? We should just shut down all white media. This kind of comes back to what I said in my earlier video, that they basically want us to be, in order to be allies, which I put in quotes, that we're just supposed to sit there and listen to everything people of color say, even if it's bullshit, and just go along with it. Because otherwise we're white people, which is, again, a new racial slur they invented for white people. So this kind of just plays up to what I was getting at, is that this is all racism. Can you imagine what would happen if somebody said we should just shut down all black media and make them quietly listen to everyone else? That would be considered racist. Because it would be. Speaking the truth as usual, and Peckerwood motherfuckers hate it. Not only does he show that he doesn't know what racism even is, but he shows that he has no interest in hearing black women share their experiences. So sick of motherfuckers like this. Peckerwood is a racial slur towards white people. I've literally been called that by black kids who were there to attack me for being white. Peckerwood is a racial slur. So then we have a guy here who's Caucasian calling me a white racial slur. And yes, I know what racism is. I did a whole video about that. Unfortunately, racism is not what you want it to mean. Then he said, this next person, ew, and he has the nerve to call those folks racist, and he compared their lived experiences discussion to a poll of who steals from white people or assaults white people more? Yes, because that would be wrong, and so is the suggestion that we need to discuss what white people as a whole do to us is also wrong. But this lived experience thing is another thing I bring up a lot, because they want us to just go along with any lived experience claim on the part of anybody who happens to be a person of color, and critical race theory literally wants you to treat the lived experiences of people of color as if it's like the equivalent of empirical evidence. But if you share your experiences and they don't fit the narrative, you're told that that's anecdotal. That's what anecdotal literally is. You can't just say, well, this is what I saw, and then assume that that therefore means that everything you say about this topic is correct. You need to get a more sample size than that. But again, that's kind of at the center of what's wrong with critical race theory. every black person is not automatically correct about every topic involving race, just as every white person is not automatically incorrect. And to suggest otherwise is just racist. And he goes, wow, his comparison of a white panel comparing who commits more crime? What the fuck? That's the most racist comparison ever. So again, my comparison was to point out that it would be racist if white people did that, which is why it's racist when black people do that. This is the CIA realizing that their only hope to save the progressive except for imperialism psyop is by discrediting the actual progressive movement with identitarian spats. Love you guys. We are all much smarter than that. So now I'm CIA. That's fantastic. I can't wait for my first check. No, I'm not CIA. The funny thing is if anything is actually a psyop to try to divide people or discredit the actual progressive movement, it's nonsense like suggesting to black people that they should behave racist towards white people, because that's what'll happen, and is already happening. It's nonsense like telling people of color that they can't be racist, which in turn simply encourages them to behave like racists, which in turn encourages white people to behave as racists in return. If anything's a psyop, that's the psyop. The divide and conquer tactics of setting us against each other on the basis of race is the CIA psyop. Not suggesting that, hey, we shouldn't do that. It's a bad idea, and that we should instead be unified as one people. Anyway. So this guy, I guess he had commented on my YouTube channel. He said, because he'll probably delete this, and then he puts, P.S. I'm learning every day, so please show me the right direction if I'm getting something wrong. As he steps up little Oliver. Please, sir, can I have some more virtue signal points? But anyway, also, how dare you try to misquote Martin Luther King? How dare you? To black people to try to make a fallacious point. I didn't misquote him. I literally quoted him directly, and I got raw footage specifically because I knew some entitled white guy was going to tell me that I was wrong. Anyway, you have a lot to learn, but first you need to stop getting butthurt as an individual when black people share their experiences with white people as a group. But that's the problem. You don't have experiences with all white people. You have experiences with individual white people. Just as white racists have experiences with individual black people. That's why targeting an entire racial group for your comments is a bad idea. Because it's racist. It's just as racist to say white people do X as it is to say black people do X, or Hispanic people do X, or Asian people do X, etc., etc., etc. I'm calling out this new hypocrisy that the idea is now that it's acceptable to be racist towards people who are white, to go so far as to lie and say that the definition of racism requires power, which it doesn't, and to engage in behavior that will literally cause more racism. That's what my issue is. I'm not butthurt. I'm pointing out that what you're doing is creating more racism. And it is. This one was a gem. It's like they don't even bother watching before making something up. Which they won't, lol. And I said, nope, I watched the entire thing and put the entire thing in my video. To which they replied, LOL, yes, I'm going to believe some stranger over my literal friends. Okay, buddy. Okay. So your friends, what, have a magical ability to see if I watch something? If you watched my video, which you pretty clearly didn't, you would see that I did include everything that Sabby and her panel said. It's all in my video. Whatever. Oh hell, you're gonna make me play devil's advocate. I agree with you that the conversation was not racist. However, oh here we go. I will always point out that generalizations are bad. We should strive to speak to our experiences without drawing an entire subgroup of folks. Right, which is exactly what my point was. Because that's exactly what they were doing. Which is why it's racism. Now, here's another one of my responses. I'm going to just read my response and the quotes that I used because otherwise I'm reading them and then reading them again. Thank you for your thoughtful response. I do like long responses, but maybe space out some paragraphs for easier reading. Now let me respond. First, I didn't use Martin Luther King against black people. I quoted him because his philosophy was core to how my generation was raised to oppose racism. I would quote him against anyone who was foolish enough to judge anyone by the color of their skin. They said, I don't think she is referring to the whole of the white community when speaking about this. And I said, honest question. If a panel of white people came on YouTube to ask who mistreats us more, black men or black women, would this be acceptable to you? This is a rhetorical question, because it certainly wouldn't be acceptable to them. But this is kind of like drawing a line on the issue of the hypocrisy in the racial activism movements right now. And then I quote what she said again. When she says, don't say you don't see color, what she means is don't discount and minimize the struggle of black people while acting as if color doesn't matter. And I said, what started my conversation was to explain that people who say I don't see color are saying, which is that when they interact with other human beings, they treat them all equally. They are not saying that they don't see you. Critical race theory wants everyone to treat every human being according to what its worldview of oppressor and oppressed is. CRT would have me as a dirt poor white trash kid who grew up in the ghetto treat an upper middle class person as if I was oppressing them. This is at its core ridiculous. Everyone has different circumstances, not just people of color. Now she says, in quoting again, now I understand that this conversation may have had you uncomfortable because you feel as though they were talking about all white people. I don't think that that is the case here. Now maybe that should have been made more clear. Fair criticism. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It just makes me think to myself, this is creating more racism. There are people who are white right now who are watching this video who are going to become racist because of what you did. It's just not, it's not constructive. It doesn't work. And I said, I wasn't, uncomfortable. I'm disappointed. If you make generalizing comments about a people, which is something people in racial activism do all the time now, you are perpetuating racism. They said, you can't wash away all of the sins of this country and what has been done to black people. Even though you may have not have been the one who committed atrocities, those events live on in the very fiber of our being. And I said, yes, and I am not responsible for those things, and therefore not accountable for those things. Every race on this earth has had something done to them. Every group, every race, every religion, etc. I am Irish and Native American. So their quote says, still I hope you and other people look deeper into the reasons that people are saying things and try to understand that in order for us to properly progress, we have to be willing and able to have uncomfortable conversations about race, color, and discrimination. I said I do have conversations about this to make people uncomfortable, but if you want that to happen and be constructive, it has to go both ways. Instead of telling people with white skin pigment that their views on issues are invalid by virtue of their skin color, for example. And, you'll also notice is that we're being told we have to have uncomfortable conversations about race and color, but that's only a privilege apparently afforded to to black people making white people uncomfortable. White people are not allowed to make black people uncomfortable. If you talk about any of the reality of what goes on in those cities, you're just called racist. No conversation is allowed to happen. The conversation is supposed to go only one way, which is them talking and you just absorbing everything they say and just agreeing to all of it unconditionally, even if they're wrong about any detail. I'm not surrendering my brain. And then she says, it's my own personal beliefs that you should be proud to be white just as much as I should be proud to be black. I said, on this, I disagree, but not for the reasons you probably think. To be white is literally a construct used by racists. I am not proud of being white. I am Irish. I am proud of that. Caucasian people come from many diverse cultures and backgrounds. They are not a monolith. Irish people had a completely different experience than British people who came to the colonies. Same with Germans, Polish, etc. The KKK wants to imagine that they are some sort of white race that is superior. A lot of people in racial activist movements now refer to white people as an inferior or oppressor race as a monolith. So the concept of white race is used by racists. By white racists and by black racists, ironically. There is no white race. I'm not proud of having white skin pigment. That's a superficial aspect of who I am as a person. And nobody should be proud of that. They should be proud of their cultures. And, it's the same thing I would say when it comes to being black. If you wanted to actually care about your culture, investigate which African tribe you're descended from. Get into that. Find out what that culture is. The idea that you are, again, defined in any way by your race is just wrong. It's wrong. Your skin color is not who you are. Your skin color is the color of the car you drive through life. So unfortunately, I actually lost the tweet with this guy, who was actually the one who started that entire thread that I've been quoting from. Shared my video and said that it was completely stupid, and that anybody who watches this knows that it's not racist. One of the things I later saw in his feed was him saying, "I hate the way the left communicates. I can't offer nuanced criticism to any left idea without either my intelligence insulted or my motives questioned. If you think I'm tone policing, there's a difference between tone policing and asking people not to be condescending assholes." This was incredibly ironic, because this is the guy who started the entire thread sharing my video with Sabby's fans, and this is exactly what all of these people are doing to me. You can't offer nuanced criticism to any left idea without either your intelligence insulted or your motives questioned. Meaning, you can't question any issue about CRT or racial activism or any of this stuff without being called a racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, transphobic, whatever. If you think I'm tone policing, there's a difference between tone policing and asking people not to be condescending assholes. One of the comments in my YouTube that got deleted was me. It was saying that I was being tone deaf for daring as a white person to discuss what black people said. So, anyway, I'm going to end this segment with this because I find it really fucking ironic that the same guy who started this mess is the same guy who said this about a different conversation he had. Because it articulates perfectly exactly why I made this video and why I made the original video.